started. Welcome to the July 12th French Broad River FBRMPO TCC. I will be your chair today. With that said, Hannah, would you please take us around for introductions? Or Asha, thank you.
We can start in the room if you guys want to start over there and just say your name and where you're from.
Stephen Sparks, NCDOT Division 13.
Steve Williams, NCDOT Division 14.
Anna Smith, NCDOT Division 13.
William High, Buncombe County.
Kristen Winkler, French Broad River MPO.
Hannah Bagley, French Broad River MPO.
Phoebe O'Connor, French Broad River MPO.
Asha Rado, Land and Sky Regional Council.
Sandy Broadwell, Land and Sky Regional Council.
Okay, and I will move on. Sorry, I didn't have that. Here, okay. I have Anna Sexton.
Hi, sorry, I'm struggling to find my mute button. Anna Sexton, City of Asheville Transportation Department.
Eric Rupa.
Yeah, good morning here.
Chloe Donahoe.
Here.
Daniel Sellers.
Here.
Shannon Bianculli.
Here.
Jody Ferguson.
Good morning, here.
Lucy Crown.
Good morning.
Matthew Manley.
Good morning.
Mike Malachek.
Here.
Noah Taylor.
Good morning.
Vicki Eastland.
Good morning, folks.
Roy Wilson.
Hey, good morning.
Josh Hunter.
Present.
Joel Strickland.
Good morning.
Sorry, this is moving and it's not easy to look at. Is there anybody that I missed that's online that I didn't call your name?
Good morning. My name is Mary Dratkins. I'm the Assistant District Engineer for District 2, Buncombe County, Madison County, and Yancey County.
Great. Thank you very much, Asha. All right, is there any public comment at this time? All right, hearing none, let's move on to the agenda and the consent agenda. Is there any comments, questions, requested amendments, etc.? Barring none, would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda?
This is
So
Lucy.
moved.
I'll make the. I'll second it. How about that?
Thank you, Lucy and Steve. Asha, would you do the honors?
Sure. Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William High.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approve.
EPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Fletcher, Eric Rufa.
Aye.
Haywood County, Jody Ferguson.
Aye.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli. Hendersonville, Matthew Manley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Noah Taylor.
Aye.
Mills River, Mike Malachek.
Approve.
RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Hannah Smith. Aye. NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Terrific. All right, thank you, everybody. With that said, let's get started with our first business item on the TIP public comment period.
Okay, so the item before you today is a plan to open the public comment period on the draft 2026 to 2035 TIP. And so this is an item coming back from February of earlier this year. So just to go over some of the things that were previously covered. So first of all, there's the STIP and the TIP, the STIP and the TIP. And so just to go over the basics of that, in North Carolina, that is a 10-year document that lays out the projects that are set to be implemented or further developed. This document is federally required. So this is a document that plays a key role in terms of getting federal funds obligated, as well as having federal action approved for projects where that's required. In general, all regionally significant transportation projects are supposed to be reflected in both the TIP and the STIP. And just to highlight, they are separate documents. The STIP is maintained by the state. So that is NCDOT's document that covers all the projects across North Carolina. The TIP is the MPO's subset. Every MPO has a TIP. And so for our MPO, that covers our area. But the STIP and the TIP are required to be in concurrence in order for projects to move forward. In general, the draft STIP was released at the end of January of this year. There was previously public drop-in meetings in February. Our general plan is to open our public comment period for the MPO's TIP on June 27th. We anticipate that in early July, the North Carolina Board of Transportation would adopt the STIP. And following that, the MPO would plan on adopting our TIP in August, with the public comment period ending the day before our August board meeting on August 20th. So that is the general plan for our public comment period. We do have a requirement in our public involvement plan to have 30 days of public comment. So we would be exceeding the 30 days. There would be an advertisement in Mountain Express with comments, with the comment period open through that time period. We will also have a public hearing at the MPO board. But just to go over, in case you've forgotten, what's going on in this draft TIP and STIP. In general, there were no new projects being funded. Many projects are being delayed, and several projects are being decommitted or defunded. Just as a reminder, the big recent issue is cost inflation for a lot of construction projects, not just in North Carolina, but across the country. This is from Federal Highways, their National Highway Construction Cost Index. You can see inflation spiked basically starting in 2021 and going through 2023. So those additional costs are being further reflected in the new draft TIP and STIP. And with more costs, there's no money for new projects, and there have had to be considerations about what projects to delay or cut to keep the document fiscally constrained. I won't go through this, but just as a reminder, there was a process that was put in place. NCDOT looked at a number of things, including project schedule and where it was in the previous TIP and STIP. They looked at seniority, what projects had been around the longest, but also as a reminder, we did rank projects as an MPO last year, and that information was used to help inform the decisions with the draft STIP as well. So for our region, the projects being decommitted, meaning they will have to compete in future rounds of prioritization in order to become funded again. The Hayward County is set to lose 3 projects. That includes the South Main project, the Russ Avenue project, that is the planned one, not the one under construction. That goes from the 2374 interchange north to Delwood Road, and also the intersection improvement project at US 276 and Crankscott Road. Buncombe County is losing a number of projects. We had talked about the A10A project previously. That's the Future 26 widening from roughly the UNCA exit up to Weaverville. That is a project that is being decommitted with the exception of a small portion near the New Stock Road interchange. Also, the remaining section of the widening of Sweeten Creek between Rock Hill Road and Mills Gap, the planned widening of Sand Hill and Sardis Roads, and the planned improvements on Swananoa River Road from Biltmore Avenue to South Tunnel Road. In Henderson County, there's one project set to be decommitted that is the I-26 and US 64 interchange. It's a number of projects. Yet again, in total, we're looking at close to $800 million in decommitted projects across our region. When you include A10, that number goes north of $1 billion. And so just to point out, the losses of projects being felt across the region are quite considerable. I'll also note that even with some projects that are remaining in the tip and stiff, there are portions of those projects that are being removed in order to save money. So Section B of the I-26 connector previously was going to do some work on the Broadway interchange. The project limits have been moved south. So now doing work at that interchange will have to be done through a different project that will have to be funded in a future round of prioritization. Also, project delays. I won't go through all of these, but a number of projects that remain committed. We're seeing the start of construction and their project schedule getting moved back. And to note, two projects had their schedule moved further back with the final version of the SIP. So that's White Street and South Main Street in Hendersonville. That was initially, in the initial draft SIP, the construction start year was 2028. That's been moved to 2029 for both of those. Also, a point of emphasis I want to make because it's come up a number of times, including in some online videos that are very well done, but something I just want to correct for folks. There's been some discussion about, if a statewide mobility project gets defunded, we can take that funding and refund all of our secondary roads projects and US and NC routes. Based on North Carolina law, that is not the way the funds work. The statewide mobility funds are almost strictly for interstates, as well as US 2374 in our region. But if a statewide mobility project were to be defunded, the funding would go back into the statewide mobility pot and could go anywhere across the state. It wouldn't stay here and we get to, do what we want with it. Unfortunately, that is not the way that works. And so that's something I've heard in a number of meetings I've seen online of why don't we just defund it and then we can fund Sweeten Creek and all kinds of other projects. That's not something we can do based on North Carolina law. But anyway, that is a brief summary of the draft SIP that we are set to put out for public comment. But based on our procedures, we are looking for a recommendation to the board to open the public comment period for the draft 2026 through 2035 TIP. Any questions or comments?
Just to remind everybody that we can defund your local project and send it to the state to fund those projects. So you know, if you ever want to do that, you just let us know. We can try it. Now, does anybody have any other erroneous comments or good ones for that matter? All right. Does anyone would like to make a recommendation to recommend the public comment period on the draft TIP to the board? Come on, Steve.
I'll make a motion for that
Thank
recommendation.
you, Steve. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Hannah. Asha, would you please help with that?
Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Harry Buckner.
Aye.
Boone County, William Hyde.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approve.
PD, Daniel Sellers.
Aye.
Fletcher, Eric Rufa.
Aye.
Haywood County, Jody Ferguson.
Aye.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Noah Taylor.
Aye.
Mills River, Mike Malachek.
Approve.
RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Hannah Smith. Aye. NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you, everyone. With that, I'll kick it over to the staff for the Elevate 2050 project list.
Sure, and just a brief introduction, with us we have Joel Strickland, who's leading the McAdams team on developing Elevate 2050 plan or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan for our region. Just as a reminder, that is the 25-year plan that is federally required for MPOs. It's required to be updated every 5 years. Our due date on this is September of this year. And so this is an important checkpoint with the TCC and board. We did go through the project and the project list with the prioritization subcommittee. That is required to be a fiscally constrained list, and the fiscal constraints are getting ever more constrained. So it's definitely a different exercise than we did back in, I believe, 2019. It's kind of funny looking back at it, but we funded, in 2019, we put programming on every highway project there was, almost. This is very different, and I think it reflects that environment. So anyway, with that, Joel, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan, and thanks everyone for letting me be with you this morning. As Tristan mentioned, we wanted to come back to you today, provide you an update since our last meeting, and specifically talk about the fiscally constrained project list today and moving forward with that. So just a brief agenda here. Again, we're going to quickly look at some of the previous work we've done at previous meetings, look at the fiscal constraints. I'll walk you through the proposed project list, and then we'll talk briefly about next steps. So just looking back at the past here and what we've been working on, summer, fall last year, obviously we set out with stakeholder engagement to kind of develop the vision, goals, and objectives for Elevate 2050. Earlier this year, we approved those vision, goals, and objectives. In March, the prioritization subcommittee and the French Broad River MPO board reviewed our scoring methodology, which was a tool in help guiding this process. And then in April, the prioritization subcommittee reviewed the draft fiscal constraints and a draft version of this fiscally constrained project list. From there, the board was presented with the CTP project list, which was the larger list of all of the projects. And then we had the public meetings for the draft Elevate 2050 project list. And then more recently, last month, we worked with the MPO staff on the financial forecasting and fiscal constraints and refining those. And then we presented the fiscal constraints to the prioritization subcommittee. And that project list was open for comments for the entirety of the project list that we presented earlier through May 16th of this year. And now moving forward, what we're working on now, what we're presenting to you today, and what we'll take to the board next week is the actual fiscally constrained project list. Moving on from there, in next month, we will have the draft of the Elevate 2050 plan open for public comment, and comments will be incorporated at the end of July. And I'll give you some more specific dates on that toward the end of the presentation here. August 2025, we'll have the final version of the Elevate 2050 plan out for public comment. And then, as Tristan mentioned, we'll come back in September for final adoption by the board of the entirety of the plan. So revisiting the fiscal constraints, I think we shared this with you at our meeting last month, but we didn't go into a lot of detail. But just wanted to revisit this with you again. Obviously, you're looking at three main columns here. There are some discretionary funds in fiscal year 29 through 35, and I'll talk about those a little bit more. But we're really looking at three main columns here. The fiscal year 26 through 35, the near term, those are really made up of the STIP projects and the STIP that Tristan just mentioned earlier in the draft STIP that's available. So we really aren't programming any projects for this 26 to 35 timeframe other than what's in the draft STIP. For 46 through 35, you can see the funding availability here. And, you know, when you look at this, it's kind of a little bit deceiving because it looks like it's going down. But what we've actually done is we factored in inflation, but then we backed out inflation from these totals so that we could keep project costs consistent and keep them in 2025 dollars to make this fiscal constraint list a little less complicated. So the numbers you see here is really the tool that we used looking forward to constrain these projects. But again, that's with the inflation backed out instead of the inflation added to it, which is very similar to the way NCDOT programs the STIP. So this is right in line with their method for projecting and constraining the STIP also. So again, today we're really looking for a fiscally constrained project list that we can take forward to the board for their approval. Again, this has gone through the prioritization subcommittee already, and they've given it their stamp of approval earlier this month. So, you know, it's obviously of the utmost importance for us to keep moving forward with this so we can meet the adoption deadlines in September of 2025 this year. So again, looking at funding again, available funding versus the programmed projects, this is really giving you an outlook over the coming years and seeing the difference here over what's programmed and what's left. So we just wanted to show you this slide to show that we are meeting fiscal constraints. And with this, as you'll see as I go through the projects, with the way we've done this, there will be some regional projects that will cascade down to the division needs tier to help get those projects funded. So we'll roll through these projects and show you a little bit of what we're looking at here and what's been moved forward. So looking at the statewide mobility projects as they're fiscally constrained, this is really a mix of I-26 projects, a mix of I-40 with the Four Seasons interchange, as well as the railroad crossing at Riverside Drives. So you can see the projects here. Again, it includes the I-26 connector, I-40 widening from Monte Vista Road to Wiggins Road, which is exit 37. Future I-26, I-26 at US 64 interchange, and then again the rail project on the Norfolk Southern line at Riverside Drive. So this is the 6 statewide projects that we are proposing at this given time. And then moving forward, we have another list of regional projects here. There's 5 projects shown here. And this really funds some priorities within the region, including Sweeten Creek, which you see there at the top, Asheville Highway intersection improvements, which is at North Main Street intersection in Henderson County, NC 215 at US 1923, from US 1923 to US 276, Smoky Park Highway, which is US 1923 Access Management Project, and that project goes from I-40 to NC 151. And then lastly there, US 176, which is an access management project on Spartanburg Highway, and that one goes from NC 225 Greenville Highway to Upward Road. So you can see the regional impact projects that are shown here. Again, programming these projects this way in the regional impact allowed us to cascade some projects down that were tiered as regional impact projects, but cascading them down to the division needs tier. And you'll see those projects as we move through the division needs here. So we've got a large number of division needs projects that are constrained here, starting with Swannanoa River Road, from Biltmore Avenue to Tunnel Road, going to the US 70 road diet from Blue Ridge Road to NC 9, North Louisiana Avenue modernization from US 1923, which is Patton Avenue, to Emma Road, Blue Ridge Road from NC 9 to US 70, Reams Creek Road modernization, Sand Hill Road intersection improvement at Sand Hill School Road, and then the Elkwood Avenue modernization from US 25 to NC 251. And these are the roadway projects that are in the division need tier in Division 13.
Yeah, I was a little, I have two questions. On the last slide, I think there might be a mistake because I didn't understand the county for the Swannanoa River Road. Maybe the one that says Blue.
Sorry, Lucy, thanks for catching that. I do need to update that county there. It looks like we got a overlap of something there, so we'll fix that.
Sure. The other question I had was, can you tell me a little bit more about the railroad improvement on Riverside Drive? What $400,000 would do for that improvement?
Yeah, I can jump in on that, Joel, if you don't mind.
Okay, go for it.
So, Lucy, I think that's still being looked at by the DOT Rail Division, but we did talk to them about putting in an improvement to improve the crossing for just about everybody. So I think right now, for folks who aren't aware, I'm sure the schedule has changed, but on Wednesdays previously, the train just kind of drifts onto Riverside Drive. There are no crossing signals whatsoever. So if you're driving, you hopefully will see the engineer in a bright vest walking next to the train. So improving that and potentially looking at some improvement due to the number of bicyclist crashes at that location.
Great. I was hoping you would say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Was there any other questions at this point? I'm sorry.
No, carry on.
All right, great. So then the division needs for Division 14, and again, these are all roadway projects. But US 64, which is Four Seasons Boulevard from I-26 to US 25 Business, US 23 Business South Main Street from US 276 to US 2374, Canoga Road modernization from US 25 Business to Price Road, US 1923, which is Asheville Highway Park Street, and this is a modernization project from NC 215 to Chestnut Mountain Road. Then Hooper's Creek Road from Mills Gap Road to Terry's Gap Road. Berkeley Road modernization from US 64 to US 25 Business. Butler Bridge Road modernization from NC 280 to US 25. And then lastly there, the Fanning Bridge Road modernization from Airport Road to US 25. So that gets us through all of the highway projects that are currently fiscally constrained. When we move on and we start looking at bike ped projects, there's a number of projects included here. And you can see some of those here. Richland Creek Greenway, Fanning Bridge Road Sidewalk, Otis T. Duck Greenway Extension, Blackwell Drive Sidewalks, Champion Drive Bike Ped Improvements, Oklawaha Greenway, Allen Branch Greenway, Church King Street Sidewalk Gaps, which is filling in some gaps on that corridor, and then Rutledge Road. Continuing over Allen Branch Greenway, Swananoa River Greenway East, Mills River Valley Trail, NC 225 Greenville Highway, Raccoon Creek Greenway, NC 251 Riverside Drive Sidewalks, Lees Creek Road Sidewalks, Main Street Streetscape in Weaverville. And then we get over to the discretionary bike ped funding, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And that really is a combination of DA funds that are distributed directly to the MPO. And it also includes an estimate of federal discretionary grants that potentially could be awarded to the region in the next few years. So looking here at Patton Avenue ped improvements, Old Clyde Road sidewalks, Benton Creek Greenway, Lake Julian multi-use path, the Above the Mud Trail, North Blue Ridge Road, US 70 Tunnel Road, and New Leicester Highway. And then additionally, there's a handful more here. North Main Clear Creek Road sidewalks, Oklawaha Section 4A, which is Mud Creek Bridge to Balfour Road, US 70 Swananoa Greenway, Park Drive Side Path, Duncan Hill Road, US 70 Tunnel Road sidewalks, Bent Creek Greenway, US 74 Fairview Road, which is filling in some sidewalk gaps, Merriman Avenue, Reams Creek Greenway, and the West Asheville Rail Trail. So those are that's the group of projects that we're looking at for fiscal constraint right now within the MTP. Just keep in mind any projects that we saw at the last meeting on the larger list that aren't included in this fiscally constrained list. They will still be accounted for within the comprehensive transportation plan. So those projects won't just fall off and disappear, but with the MTP portion of this plan, it has to be fiscally constrained. So we're really limited to the number of projects we can include on that. But the other projects, as I mentioned, will still be included in the comprehensive transportation plan. So moving forward, obviously we're recommending this draft project list for approval today. And again, the completion of Elevate 2050, as Tristan mentioned earlier, must be done by September to meet the federal deadlines. We'll take this list to the board next week for their approval. And then we'll start adding these projects to the travel demand model so we can get some more feedback on how these projects are panning out and the effect that they're having on the network. The 30-day public comment period that we're looking at for the draft Elevate 2050 plan will run between June 27th and July 27th. And then we've got a series of public meetings set up during that comment period also. Those will run July 7th, 8th, and 9th. Monday, July 7th will be at the Dr. Wesley Grant Senior Southside Center. July 8th will be at the Mills River Town Hall, and then July 9th will be at Waynesville Town Hall. And then from there, once we get through that comment period, get through those series of public meetings, we'll have the final plan available for public comment. And then we'll have the prioritization subcommittee review and recommend the final plan at their meeting in September with the intent of adoption also in September. So if someone has any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those. It looks like Mr. Manley might.
Yeah, can you go back to the list of the bike ped and greenway projects?
Sure. Was there a particular one?
I'm looking for the slough to grade do we have anything on there related to Saluda-grade? And should we?
No, we weren't able to get Saluda-grade on the fiscally constrained list.
Say that again.
We weren't able to get Saluda-grade on the fiscally constrained list. It's in general, it's a big project, and it just I believe it just did not rank high enough in order to make the list.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious in what, one thing that we want, and some of you guys are familiar with this, is to be looking at that next section from Zirconia to Hendersonville. So just want to make sure that's on the radar as these, long-term plans are put together. So.
Absolutely, yeah. We know it's a priority, and it's something that would still be reflected in the identified needs. It just did not make this cut of the fiscally constrained list.
All right, does anyone have any further questions for Joel? I would like to thank everybody from the prioritization committee. This was a long meeting to get through all of these and come up with this list. And so if you have any questions, if anybody has any questions, you can also ask folks in the prioritization committee who recommended this. So if there's no questions or comments at this time, does anyone want to make a motion to recommend this to the board?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Thank you. All right. Do we have what's Janice?
I'll second it if you need a
Thank you,
second.
Lucy. Got a core group here today. All right, Asha.
All right, Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Heck yes.
Hart, Jessica Morris.
Normal, yes.
Billboard Forest, Harry Buckner.
Aye.
King County, William High.
Approved.
Bumpton Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approve.
TCC, Daniel Sellers.
Aye.
Fletcher, Eric Rufa.
Aye.
Gaylord County, Jody Ferguson.
Aye.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Cooley.
Aye.
Andersonville, Matt Manley.
Aye.
Aggie Valley, Noah Taylor.
Aye.
Mills River, Mike Malasek.
Approve.
RTO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Hannah Smith. Aye. NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you, everybody. All right. With that, we'll kick it off for the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan Amendment. Presume Hannah's going to take this.
Yes. And what a perfect segue into talking about Saluda-grade. Oh my goodness, that does not show up on.
It's good on the TV.
Can folks online see the green block?
Maybe that's the other one's good one.
Okay, I think you're fine.
Okay. Just cannot see it in the room. I'm sorry.
We can, just not on the wall screen.
Yeah.
So today I'm going to talk about an amendment to the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan to include the Saluda-grade trail. Background on the Hellbender, I'm sure a lot of you all know about the Hellbender. It's a regional trail plan to connect existing and planned multimodal improvements in Buncombe, Henderson, Haywood, Madison, and Transylvania counties. The goal of the plan is to knit together existing and planned infrastructure rather than plan new connections. And then a little bit of background on the Saluda-grade for those who are not familiar. The Saluda-grade is a 31-mile trail from Inman, South Carolina to Zirconia, North Carolina, and the alignment would follow the existing Saluda-grade rail line. The partners that are spearheading the project are Conserving Carolina, PAL, which is Play, Advocate, and Live Well, and Upstate Forever in South Carolina. The feasibility for the study was completed in August of 2024, and the Saluda Grade Trail Coalition signed a contract to purchase the rail line also in August of 2024. There was also a separate study done about connecting the Saluda Grade to the Oklawaha or the Akusta Trail, and that was completed, I believe, in January of 2025. So this is a map of the Saluda Grade Trail from the Saluda Grade website. As you can see, it enters Hendersonville right outside Saluda, or Henderson County right outside Saluda, and it goes up to Zirconia, and it will potentially end at the Blue Ridge Community College in Hendersonville. So we are proposing an amendment to add the Saluda Grade as an appendix to the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan, and that would include a map update, so a map update to our subway map or the conceptual map and the GIS files. And obviously this amendment is going before the TCC and board. And there was guidance from the Hellbender Trail Work Group. We talked about this in our work group meeting in April, and the work group recommended to bring an amendment before the board and TCC. So this is the current Hellbender subway map. You can see the orange line runs from north to south, and the updated Hellbender, or the subway map, you can see the orange line where the previous southern termini was at Blue Ridge Community College. You can see the line extend down to the county line, and there is a little arrow that says Saluda Grade Trail that would continue the trail into South Carolina, or into Polk County and then into South Carolina. So our proposal is to add the Saluda Grade to the written plan with a standalone appendix that acknowledges the Saluda Grade as part of the Hellbender system. It also shows what the future Hellbender system looks like with the addition of Saluda Grade through the map. We're looking for a motion to add the Saluda Grade to the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan. And then to note, more work will need to be done on how Saluda Grade fits with the current Oklawaha Greenway extension projects that are already planned. Does anybody have any questions?
All right. Hearing none. Someone wants to recommend to the board that we adopt this amendment.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we recommend amending the Hellbender Regional Trail map to include the Saluda Grade Trail. And I'll make another pitch that as part of the narrative of the Saluda Grade Trail, that we begin saying that it runs from Hendersonville to Inman or Spartanburg, because I think that's where that trail is going to end up connecting. I don't know that Zirconia as a destination, not knocking Zirconia, but there's going to be there's a little more critical mass behind the narrative when it's connecting a little bit more prominent destinations. So just throwing that out there, that's something that we're talking about here, just trying to change that narrative some so that this is a long-term vision for a trail, and so we want to start that narrative right now. So anyone want a second?
Thank you, Matt.
I needed a quick clarification because now I'm confused, Matt. Hannah, did we say that it would go to Hendersonville, or are we saying that it would stop at Zirconia?
We're recommending, right now, I guess the plan says it stops at Zirconia, but can we recommend that it stops in Hendersonville?
So, currently the Saluda Grade stops at Zirconia. However, there were initial looks at ways to connect from Zirconia up to Hendersonville. So it's still, my understanding is that connection is still somewhat conceptual. There's still more things that would need to be determined to move that section forward. But considering the Hellbender is a very conceptual plan, we have sections where, you know, like Weaverville to Mars Hill, we have no idea what the alignment is going to be, but the Hellbender plan states that connecting Weaverville to Mars Hill is something of regional importance. This amendment would be similar, that we don't know exactly how that connection would take place, but connecting from Hendersonville to the existing Oklawaha and Acosta trails over to the Saluda grade would be an important regional connection. Does that make sense, Janet?
Yeah, it seems odd, like it wouldn't be a regional trail if it doesn't connect to the rest of the Hellbender. So I feel like it needs to go to Hendersonville to make that connection, because otherwise it's regional with South Carolina and the foothills COG, but it's not regional with our MPO if it's not actually connecting anywhere. So I think it needs to go to Hendersonville on the map. And yes, Tristan, I was about to call you out on that if you didn't clarify that this is all very conceptual.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it is conceptual, but that same line runs right into Hendersonville. So there is like, yes, there are constraints there, but if we're talking about a big picture, like there's a, you know, there's some things that make sense that aren't too, don't take too much creativity to think about. Oh yeah, that makes sense. It runs right into Hendersonville. And I think what I'm just like what Tristan was saying about emphasizing that it's of regional importance, even if you don't have all the details nailed down. That's exactly what we're trying to emphasize by making sure that as this continues to be talked about, we're changing it to from Hendersonville to Spartanburg or Hendersonville to Inman, just to highlight that importance. And so then with that narrative, then you can begin to build momentum amongst leaders, amongst funders, et cetera. So that's why we're really just trying to put some emphasis on that now to assist and push forward this potential future connection. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to clarify, I mean, I think there's kind of two different narratives. There's one within the Hellbender that we can control, where we are saying that the Hendersonville to Saluda grade connection is one we see as a concept of regional importance. But I think on the other side of that, there's the project actually being managed by Conservative Carolina, and we can forward those comments on to that project team. And I think you've already said that to them. We'll make sure the mayor of Zirconia doesn't hear any of your previous comments.
Yeah, that was just, you can tell him Lou Holloway said that.
It looks like the map doesn't need to change though. It looks like, I think you probably had it like the Oklawaha or something was what was extending south. So the map is fine the way it is. So I'm fine with seconding Matt's motion and just moving forward with this map as it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. And just to mention that this is an amendment and we can have more of them in the future. So that said, Asha, would you please take us around?
Sure. Asheville, Lucy Graham.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Harry Buckner.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William Hyde.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approve.
CDD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Fletcher, Eric Rufa.
Aye.
Haywood County, Jody Ferguson.
Aye.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Noah Taylor.
Aye.
Mills River, Mike Malachek.
Approve.
RTO, Vicky Eastland.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Hannah Smith. Aye. NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you, everybody, and that concludes all of our voting stuff. We'll move on to our informational items, kicking it off with Daisy's State of Transit. If you give me one second.
All right, so this is the State of Transit report. This is just intended to give us a snapshot of what's going on regionally in transit. The primary source of information for this report is from the National Transit Database. It examines the 5-year period between 2019 and 2023, and just to clarify, the reason that we only go to 2023 is because stats are not yet available for fiscal year 24, and we don't expect them to be released until sometime in the late fall or early winter. And so 2023 is the last benchmark year that we had available. And just to briefly go over the MPO's role in transit and how we work to coordinate that, we are responsible for transit planning and policy development, and that includes the development updates to the MCP and incorporating regional transit needs and priorities, working with local governments, transit agencies, and the public to set transit goals and policies, and providing resources to local partners for long-term planning and feasibility studies. In terms of funding allocation and grant coordination, we facilitate the distribution of federal and state transit funding, including Section 5307, Section 5310, and JARC, which we just recently had the call for projects for. And then we prioritize transit projects for inclusion in the transportation improvement program. In terms of interagency and public engagement, we coordinate with regional transit operators, including city and county transit systems, human service transportation providers, and regional trail initiatives, and engage public and key stakeholders in transit planning efforts through meeting surveys and outreach programs, and just work to foster regional collaboration to improve transit accessibility and connectivity across jurisdictional boundaries. The role that transit plays in regional mobility is by decreasing roadway congestion, by reducing reliance on single occupancy vehicles. Transit alleviates congestions on major highways and arterials, improving travel times for all commuters. Enhances multimodal connectivity. Transit integrates with biking, walking, and rideshare services, enabling seamless travel options across the region, and investment in park and ride facilities and transit hubs that encourage greater transit use. And then optimizing transportation infrastructure, expanding transit services, reduce wear and tear on roadways, and potentially lowers long-term infrastructure costs. The systems that we covered Asheville Rides Transit. Asheville Rides Transit operates fixed route bus services within the city of Asheville along Route 170, servicing Black Mountain, and routes that extend to unincorporated parts of Buncombe County. Mountain Mobility or Buncombe County provides demand response and deviated fixed route services within Buncombe County. Apple Country Public Transit with Henderson County offers fixed route services throughout Henderson County. And then Apple Country Transportation is operated through Western Carolina Community Action, provides demand response services in Buncombe County. Haywood Public Transit, operated by Mountain Project, offers a variety of transportation services in Haywood County, including regular daily bus routes, assisted community transit, and demand response services with emergency transportation and more. Rides are available through set loops and by reservation through routes running the core of Haywood County from Canton to Waynesville, with an option to connect to a much larger Buncombe County transportation system to the east. Madison County Transportation Authority provides a demand response curb-to-curb transit system serving all of Madison County. And then the Transylvania County Transportation System offers demand response transportation services within Transylvania County. And just looking at a snapshot of the NTD data from 2023, this is the system as it sat during the last NTD reporting period, and we'll break this down in a little bit more detail as we go, but this is just a snapshot of that last reporting period. One of the biggest things that NTD provides us with is unlinked passenger trips. So basically every passenger trip that occurs on a transit system, it provides us with an understanding of how many passengers have onboarded and offboarded on the system entirely. There are inherent accuracy issues with this, whether using automated passenger counts or manual passenger counts with an accuracy of 90 to 98%. For both methods for reporting unlinked passenger trips. And you'll have to forgive me for the graphs in this presentation. We were unable to get all of the jurisdictions on the same axis because they're operating systems in entirely different contexts. But this is just looking at from 2019 to 2023 Buncombe County unlinked passenger trips. One thing that we're going to see throughout this presentation is some shifts that occur because of COVID on years 2020 and 2021, with drops in passenger trips during that time period, and then most systems are either climbing to regain the loss pre-COVID or have already surpassed that loss. This is the City of Asheville's data that was reported to NTD. We did communicate with the City of Asheville, and they provided us updated statistics that differed from NTD. These were from their own counts. And what that shows is, rather than that dip in 2022, 2023, we're seeing a more even growth curve toward the end, where Asheville's starting to climb out of that COVID slump. Henderson County shows that they've recovered the loss from COVID and are continuing to climb in their unlinked passenger trips. And then combined, we have the rest of the county with Madison County Transportation Authority shown in blue, Transylvania County shown in gray, Mountain Projects shown in dark orange, and Western Carolina Community Action shown in the orange, yellow color, or whatever color that is on the screen up there. Sorry about that. Fare revenues, these are just the revenues that are taken at the fare box on each system, and this shows a snapshot between 2019 and 2023. This is a little bit complicated because several systems have either gone fare-free at some point during the reporting period or are fare-free entirely now, which is where you see the zeros.
Hey, can you go back one real quick?
Absolutely.
Is this a typo for Mountains Project Inc. in 2020? The 224,000?
Mountain Project Inc. in 2020. That was what, I'll have to go back and check that. I can check up on that after the presentation and get back to you.
Okay.
So good catch.
If there were two, if there was only supposed to be 1 2 at the front of that, it would make more sense to me. But maybe something happened.
Yeah, I'll verify that and get back to you. Thank you for that catch. Looking at operating expenses per unlinked passenger trip, this breaks down the system on basically what operating expenses are required to get each passenger on board. Any questions there? And again, we see that same trend with a climb in operating expenses per unlinked passenger trip starting in 2020 and 2021, with most systems dropping back down to at least snap back into their growth curve of just constant increase, but not a huge upspike in the operating expenses per unlinked passenger trip. But generally speaking, what we're seeing is an overall increase in unlinked or operating expense per unlinked passenger trip. And then going into operating fund sources, the sources that NTD tracks are fare revenues, which is anything taken at the fare box, directly generated operating funds, and that can be things like advertising revenue or any special programs that are run by the transit system, and then local funding, which is contributed by the local government responsible for running the transit system. State funding and federal funding are all sources within the NTD reports. So this breaks down for year 2023, how much each system used in each type of operating fund. And I'll have this broken down in graph format so we can see just the diversity in how our different transit systems are funding themselves, or funding their services, rather. So as you can see, City of Asheville reports that they're largely using local operating funds with a mix of federal operating funds, state operating funds, and directly generated operating funds. And for these graphs, the directly generated operating funds also include fare revenues. Buncombe County is using a more diverse mix, but still operating the system largely off local operating funds. Henderson County is seeing most of their mix come from federal operating funds. And then Madison County is seeing a mix of directly generated operating funds and federal operating funds for their revenue sources. Mountain Projects, again, is seeing a large proportion of local operating funds. And the same with Transylvania County. And then Western Carolina Community Action derives most of their funding from the state. From 2019 to 2023, these are the capital funds that each transit operator expended. I think the important thing to note about capital funds is that it's common to see years where there's significantly less capital funds expended, depending on what vehicle replacement cycles or what large capital funds or capital projects need to be engaged. But it's not atypical to either see low expenditures or 0-year expenditures followed by a large expenditure the following year. Asheville's broken out just because their operating expenses weren't able to be captured on the same axes, but you can see that kind of impact of slow years for capital funds expended versus years where more expended. And we see the same trend with all of our other operators as well. With that, I can take any questions.
Yeah.
Are you planning to show this to the MPO board?
Yes.
I've noticed there's like a mix between like some of the data was just fixed route data, and then some of the data I feel like was fixed route and paratransit. And so I am very cautious with, I want to be cautious with what is shown. I'll just leave it at that. And so maybe we can look at this together before the board meeting, and just kind of a breakdown of where the data is from and which data sets were used.
Certainly, I can set something up prior to next week's meeting with you. That would help.
That'd be great. Thank you, Daisy.
Okay, any other questions for Daisy? All right. Thank you very much. And now for perhaps the most in-demand man in the area.
Yeah.
Nathan Moneyham, I-26.
Maybe a second.
It's okay, we're using
There we go.
delays with this project.
Yeah.
So I just want to provide a quick update for I-2513. I'm going to cover a couple sections. I don't have a ton of new information, just really a status of some ongoing efforts, really from the past month or so, and what we're looking at moving forward in the more near immediate future. Before we get to the larger project, wanted to briefly cover the active construction work, talk about I-2513 AAB, that's the active work on I-40. There's a lot of current operations going on out there. We have completed our initial clearing and grubbing. There's a lot of grading going on and some initial drainage installation. A box culvert's been extended and some pavement repairs. So not a lot of work that you necessarily see from the roadway, but there is a lot happening. From a traffic perspective, I-40 eastbound outside lane is temporarily closed. That's about an 18-month duration. And then upcoming, about the middle of July, you'll see the same thing happen on the I-40 westbound outside lane. In the picture you see on the right, you really see the purpose of that is what will allow the beginning of the construction of the railroad bridge. And all that work you see in gray on the right side of the screen. And that's kind of the status of what the project will probably be in for the next roughly year and a half. Is the construction of what will be the new off-ramp for Smoky Park Highway. The other thing I'll note about this one, I've got a completion date down at the bottom. It's completion of March 2029. If you're familiar with some of the other presentations I've given, that is a change that's been slightly shifted. Mainly due because there was a little bit of a late start to their work due to the link. Archer assisted us in a lot of the storm repairs. So a lot of the crews that were going to start out here were working on other things. So with that late start, we see a little bit of a shift in completion. Other project to kind of briefly cover is I-2513AC, which is in design now. The update that I wanted to give really here is that we are doing some plan changes there, nothing major, but we are taking some of the baseline O&R concepts that came out of BD and applying it to I-2513AC. Things like narrower shoulders, relaxed standards, and carrying that through. So there's some design work going on with that. Nothing's changing with geometry or interchange design, anything like that. But we are taking those concepts and pulling them down in an adjacent project. There's also a coordination effort with I-2513BD and the Haywood Road interchange, and as that design gets looked at and we move forward with it, there's a lot of close coordination between these two projects. But we are still working towards a let in November of 2026. Just from a broad standpoint, we are continuing right-of-way acquisition for I-2513AC. We're about 95% complete. On our utility parcels, all contacts, I should say contacts, not contracts, but all contacts have been made as far as to all the property owners affected by the project and in various stages of right-of-way negotiation and appraisal. But the key there is the utility parcels, because what that really will trigger is the beginning of utility relocation for Duke, AT&T, and others that we expect to begin this fall. So I-2513BD, just a status update of kind of where we are without necessarily rehashing other presentations that we've done here. But as far as the current effort, the NEPA reevaluation is ongoing and in coordination with FHWA. A big part of that was the public meeting that we held on April 24th. Public comment from that meeting was received up until May 25th. And we are compiling and reviewing those comments and hoping to get through all of those by the end of July. And that all goes into the reevaluation and the coordination with FHWA. The other big effort kind of concurrent with that and directly related is the design noise report, which is updating the draft noise report that was done during O&R procurement to the final design. The monitoring for that began in May. You see the draft schedule there, validation models and reports should be expected in July. And then from there, the draft design noise report in January of next year and the final design noise report in March of 2026. That's really what will help us determine and really determine the location of noise walls and all the mitigation efforts through our standard noise policy. From a design perspective, we are continuing on. The 25% plan submittal is under review. We've been through a couple rounds of comments with the design build team on that. That level of plan is really what was presented at the April 24th meeting. It's not anything new. It's just the technical aspects of that design have been reviewed. The biggest kind of upcoming milestone from a plan perspective is working towards right-of-way plans. That, from a schedule perspective, is in September of this year. Other ongoing activities, there's geotechnical investigations going on in some areas, including along the river. And then we are also continuing with our early right-of-way acquisition parcels and identifying additional parcels, total stakes and otherwise, to add to that list and start reaching out and doing some additional acquisition this summer, specifically on parcels that are going to be relocations. Utility coordination is also ongoing. We've got regular update meetings with Duke, AT&T, and others as we they begin their design process for redesigning their lines and identifying their easement needs. Again, all feeding into that right-of-way plan submittal later this year. From a larger group or a larger perspective, and really there's two kind of efforts that I wanted to highlight that are ongoing now. In conjunction with everything that's happening there from a design perspective, is we do have in our meeting with the Aesthetics Advisory Committee that was commissioned by the City of Asheville, they have began meeting again weekly since the end of May. And the purpose of that is to evaluate the aesthetic elements that potentially need to be incorporated into the I-26 overpass over Patton that's been proposed. There's a lot of concepts that have been discussed in those meetings: lighting, structural elements, form liners, vertical abutments, and largest of which is probably future land use of the area under and around the proposed structure. Those meetings are coordinated by the City of Asheville. They are public. They are held at our office, and you'll be able to find information on the city's website about links to the streaming options for those. And they're also open to public comment, both virtually and in person, as far as input in that process. Concurrently to that, just as we need to continue on schedule and avoid delays, we are having additional stakeholder meetings with the IAWNC, the I-26 Citizens Coalition, elected officials, city, county, and MPO staff. We had our first meeting with them this week on Tuesday, and the purpose of that meeting was to initially review the charrette findings from the charrette that they held a couple weeks ago. We went through those in our meeting, discussed the challenges and potential for incorporation into the project. And the next steps for that really is after that meeting and all the information that was discussed and gathered in the department and design build team, we're going to get together and evaluate those concepts for feasibility, start to look from a cost and schedule perspective, do some legwork and see what potentially could be incorporated and what challenges there are even above what we discussed on Tuesday, or challenges that we potentially could find a way around. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled with that group in 4 to 6 weeks. We want to make sure we take enough time that we can do enough legwork ahead of time to make those meetings productive. So we don't necessarily have them on a regular recurring schedule, but we do intend and expect that will be an ongoing process through the summer as we continue to refine the design and work towards right-of-way and eventually construction. The other thing that I'll say is just from a regular MPO update standpoint, that's something that has been discussed, and from the department's perspective, coordinate with Tristan, happy to come back and as we hit those milestones, as these efforts start to turn into the results of these efforts start to be more defined, to come back and share with the MPO. Any questions about any of those updates?
Nathan, could you provide folks with a brief summary of some of the requests coming out of the community charrette?
Sure, and I will say they have some publicly facing things that where you can find those on the I-26 Coalition's website. I think a lot of the asks are related to the I-26 and Patton overpass, and wanting to see that reverted back to the original design. There are a lot of challenges from a phasing perspective to that. And how to maintain traffic, as well as some utility conflicts. Those are the challenges that we talked through on Tuesday. Some other main concerns are the area around Hill Street, and that connector road, the impacts that, the east side of 240, due to the change that was coordinated in O&R with the roundabout shifting sides of 240. So we're gonna take a closer look at that and see what potential changes could be made there. The other big area of discussion was Hayward Road, looking at any way we could to minimize the impacts there, and there were a couple different proposals there. And also there's a larger discussion that was had about capacity, which is really, we've already shrunk to the lowest point we can based on purpose and need and level of service. So that was more of a discussion of kind of the history of how we've got there and the technical aspect of the traffic analysis. And again, there's some detailed information online that group has made available that you can find as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Nate? Okay. Well, I would like to say that Nathan did a great job navigating some heated discussion the other day at the Charette planning meeting. What's up there? Okay, with that, we'll move on to regular updates and kick off to Division 13.
Yep, so I want to start off with a personnel update. I think I may have mentioned at our last meeting that I have taken another position at Division, still in project development, but not in planning. And as of last week, we do have a new planning engineer. His name is Doug Phillips. He comes from mostly construction background. He's been with the department, I think, over 25 years at this point, mostly in construction, and he also spent some time as a technical trainer in material and test unit. So he is effective, I think, of last Saturday, but we're going through a bit of a transition, so you'll probably see both of us here in the coming months, especially with the lift for prioritization that we've got upcoming. So I'll start including him on any correspondence. So look for him in person next time, hopefully, and potentially next week at the board. As far as projects, I'll focus mostly on our interstate work because we got a good bit of that. I wanted to touch on the I-40 project from mile marker 45 to 50. It's my understanding that we don't have any remaining weekend closures, that we wrapped that up with our final closure last month for the bridge surface work. So the remaining work will be resurfacing operations, and that'll occur through nightly lane closures. So I think we're through the weekend I-40 closures. Nathan covered the I-2513 AA, AB, and AC, so I'll skip that. I did want to touch on Haywood Road. We have had the pre-construction conference with the contractor. They're anticipating starting concrete work after July 4th, but the paving will be done next year. And then you'll see on this list, there is another I-40 eastbound exit 53A project. That's not the acceleration lane. We did finish that project. That is overhead sign. The overhead sign is going to be replaced. So they're currently working on fabrication of that sign. We're looking for installation sometime this summer. And then I wanted to touch lastly on I-26 widening 4700. Let me switch over again a second. We are shooting for a westbound traffic shift June 30th. There'll obviously be some press that goes out about that if we meet that date. But essentially the goal is to move westbound traffic onto the new alignment between Long Shoals and the French Broad River. And so that would put westbound traffic on the new alignment for the entire project. So we're shooting for June 30th there. And then following that would be an eastbound traffic shift to move to the westbound alignment in that same area. And that is a tentative schedule for July 1st. Again, look for press releases to come out for both of those. And then wanted to touch on the Blue Ridge Parkway. The contractor has a goal to shift traffic to the new alignment and the new bridge on July 25th. And then demolition of the old bridge would follow that in the coming weeks. So lots of moves coming out there in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So just be careful, pay attention to your surroundings as you traverse through there because changes are coming. I think that's it, unless there's any questions for me.
How will the demolitions occur on the bridge?
We'll probably have to close the interstate at night, and it'll be nighttime operations. Nathan, is that accurate-ish?
Yeah, currently, we have an approved demo plan coordinated with National Parks and FHWA. That's basically, we're gonna take it down piece by piece. So pretty slow, long process, not the closures and cutting sections back. There is a discussion about doing it more all in one place. I don't know if that's something that's feasible or not. We are talking about it. The main challenge there is to do that would require a full closure 26, probably for like a 4 weekend. And that has its own challenges. But currently the plan is a section by section, many different nightly lane closures, but we are looking for some efficiency in that. And if we get to the point that we feel like we can do that, we'll share. But I feel like right now the biggest hurdle is the impacts to the traveling public on I-26 for that duration of closure. It's a pretty big concern.
Thank you very much. Okay, Steve, I presume.
Yes. All right, construction, same thing going on in Haywood County that's been going on for a while. Lots of bridges on I-40 under construction, and of course, the Pigeon River Gorge. Kind of same status of one lane open in each direction. The I-26 project, I think Tristan or somebody from MPO sent out a press release today that there will be lane closures for several weeks at night, just as the punch list is things like final permanent paint, rumble strips, the weigh-in motion sensors, that type stuff. So be looking for those lane closures again at night. I think it's between 8 and 6. The I-26 bridge over the Green River, there has been a lane closure on the, I think it's the eastbound side for this week. It is supposed to be open now. I don't know if Troy's on here still or not. He might can confirm that is open. There's a restriction in the contract that lane closures can't be through the weekend, so it's supposed to be open this evening, if it's not already. Yeah, I think that's it for construction. The same projects that you've been seeing for a while. Project development side of things, obviously we haven't added any projects in quite some time. Bridge projects, the let dates continue to be pushed out just to balance the budget. So if you compare some of these dates to the last update, you'll see that they moved anywhere from 6 months to a couple of years. Yeah, and I don't think that I've added any new bridge projects on that. We'll be cleaning this up hopefully by the next time we meet and get rid of the draft stip dates and kind of pull those into the actual let dates. Remember, these are located on the MPO's website. Any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Beg your pardon, you did say this. And is there an estimate on when I-40 will be fully open?
2.5 years now, I think, is what the last presentation that Brian Birch gave.
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll kick it off to Transportation Planning Branch. Daniel.
Hey, good afternoon. The no major updates have been crossing my desk. It feels like a very slow period. But I do want to introduce somebody who's on the call. We hired a new employee in my group who's going to be shadowing me, and you will see him at lots and lots of meetings over the next year. His name is John Hunter, and he comes to the Transportation Planning Division from Division 12. So that's it. Just in case nobody gets caught by surprise when he shows up.
Really? That's it? Amazing. Okay. Well, with that, MPO staff.
Sure. The subcommittees continue to meet, especially prioritization and 5307 work groups. Just some relatively quick legislative updates. So on the federal side, a few new things that have come in. One is a series of rulemaking initiatives have been canceled at USDOT. That includes state and metropolitan planning rulemaking. I believe what was released is that the plan is to restart that effort when a new transportation law is in place. Just to point out, there have not been any major revisions to state and metropolitan planning rules since the bipartisan infrastructure law. However, the law has introduced some changes to state and metropolitan planning. So one example of where that's going to be a little bit confusing is the law states, for instance, just one of the many things, that MPOs are required to look at regional housing considerations as part of metropolitan planning. The rules are supposed to state what exactly we're supposed to do with that general sentence. So we will not know what we are supposed to do with that until there is at least a new transportation law. So we have to do it for the law, but what exactly that means and what we will be evaluated on by USDOT, we don't know, or we will continue to not know. And there's a number of things like that. However, work is continuing on drafting a new transportation law. That's expected to be drafted either later this year or early next year, and be ready for when the bipartisan infrastructure law expires in 2026. We did give a bit more of an update on that at our last meeting, but just a reminder of a few things that some high-level themes that were given to us from the Association of MPOs is consolidating grant programs, especially the discretionary grants, and likely reductions to a number of programs, including transit and federal rail programs. Also, the NOFO was released on the Bridge Investment Program, and there were changes to the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program that have loosened regulations on what that program can do. It used to be solely focused on fiber infrastructure. Now it's a little more open, but I think in terms of what we do, the requirements on coordination with other infrastructure projects and programs has been loosened as well. And so that's just worth noting. State updates. One thing I'd like to note is House Bill 1012, the Disaster Recovery Act Part 2, that's working its way through the General Assembly. A couple of things in the current version of the bill would provide $10 million to the Rail Division to assist with repairs to the rail network, and an additional $30 million for the Private Roads and Bridges program. That's what we've got on legislative updates. Also, just a reminder, the first leg of the Acusa Trail will be having its ribbon cutting on July 18th at 2 p.m. That's very exciting. That will essentially, upon opening, will become the longest continuous trail in the MPO region. I think across the 5 counties as well. That is the largest grant-funded infrastructure project. Hopefully, I'm getting that right, Jana. That Henderson County has ever undertaken, and that is the largest project funded with the MPO's direct allotment that has come to completion. So, very, very exciting project. We hope you'll join us for the ribbon cutting and those for the trail. And also, I wanted to hand things off to Sandy for a quick Strive Not to Drive update.
So Strive Not to Drive took place last month, and I have in lieu of talking to you guys about it, I have a video to share about how it went. So hopefully the sound works. Got it, sorry.
Strive Not to Drive is a series of events, programs, and incentives held in May each year designed to celebrate and promote sustainable transportation. It's a regional initiative in Western North Carolina facilitated by Go Mountain, a program of the Land of Sky Regional Council, and was originally started by Asheville advocates in the 1980s. The goal of Strive Not to Drive is to encourage people in Western North Carolina to reconsider how they get around the region and explore their communities in ways other than by driving alone. It includes a commuter challenge where residents can earn points for biking, walking, carpooling, riding the bus, or even working from home. These modes of transportation increase the resiliency of our transportation network and decrease congestion for everyone on the road. Active transportation and transit increase the health and safety of our community, providing ways to stay connected to each other and our neighborhoods, and giving more eyes on the street. Biking and walking are good for both mental and physical health and fitness, and provides a way to slow down and experience life at a different speed. People who do so as part of their commute report less stress upon arriving at work than those who drive. It reduces our region's environmental impact and carbon emissions and puts less wear and tear on our transportation infrastructure. Although not everyone can bike, walk, or take a bus from where they live, carpooling is another great option. There are multiple park and ride locations around our region designed to allow folks to meet up to ride together or access public transportation from a single location. In 2025, there were over 17 Strive Not to Drive events held in Buncombe, Haywood, and Henderson counties. In Buncombe County, events this year included a Roll Out of Work event for National Bike to Work Day, a Bike Polo Newbie Night, and a free transit day with ART bus service. There was also a bike and walk audit training session to teach participants how to evaluate infrastructure needs and identify and assess potential improvements. There was a walk audit for Lucy Herring Elementary the following morning and a bike bus for students. Asheville also had a Ride of Silence to bring attention to people riding bikes who have been injured or killed in roadway collisions. There was also a bike in cinema, a smart cycling class, and 2 events aimed specifically at employers to encourage them to provide commuter benefits and learn how to increase their share of employees who bike or ride the bus to work. It was Haywood County's biggest year for Strive Not to Drive ever. They hosted a kids' bike drive to support children who may have lost their bikes during Hurricane Helene. They also had a free transit week and a Bikes, Buses, and Brews social ride, which was the very first outreach event ever for Pigeon River Bikes, a brand new bicycle cooperative serving Haywood County. Haywood Public Transit even produced a brand new commercial for their bus service in the lead up to Strive Not to Drive, and the city of Waynesville did a ceremonial proclamation to designate the week. Henderson County kicked off Strive Not to Drive Week with a social spin, which was Bike Walk Hendersonville's first ever social ride. They also had an outreach booth at the Hendersonville Farmers Market where walk audit trainings took place and visitors could learn more about Apple Country Public Transit, which is fare-free, and learn how to load a bike on the bus. There was also a Downtown Dollars promotion in Henderson County, allowing people to bike, walk, or bus to participating businesses and earn downtown dollars. Studies show that people biking and walking generates greater economic impact than driving. Hendersonville also had its own International Ride of Silence and wrapped up the week with a Hiking Henderson County event at Jackson Park, led by a local naturalist and plant expert. Each person who attended Strive Not to Drive events throughout the week was eligible to enter and win a number of great prizes and giveaways, which this year included baseball tickets to the Asheville Tourists, free monthly bus passes, and safety swag donated by Liberty Bicycles. Strive Not to Drive aims to foster long-term behavior change in how people move around our region, to celebrate sustainable transportation, and to create a culture in which driving alone is not the default option. If you or your organization in Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Madison, or Transylvania counties want to participate in Strive Not to Drive next time, please reach out to Sandy at landofsky.org to learn how you can be involved. Let's keep the momentum rolling. Thank you so much to all of our partners who helped make Strive Not to Drive possible in 2025.
Hello, my cutie friends. It's been 3.
Well, I think that covers everything. Tristan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not have a meeting next month.
Correct. So no meetings planned for July unless something wild pops up. So our next scheduled meeting is, I believe, August 14th.
Well, thank you all. We'll see you in 2 months.
Thanks, folks.